Recently, the U.S. engaged in peace talks with China, and it seems like they're not going too well because the AP is reporting it's unusual, the level of bickering and a smackdown that's been going on back and forth. The U.S. criticizes China over a lot of things they're doing. China criticizes back. But China is accusing the U.S., I kid you not, of slaughtering black people, exploiting the Black Lives Matter and woke narrative to criticize the U.S. when the U.S. tries calling out the concentration camps and other things. Other than that, China's been saying that in the U.S., we have no grounds to complain about democracy over there because the people in the U.S. don't even agree with American democracy either. And the whole thing seems to be, well, highly unusual, they say, but shocking to a lot of people because among many conservatives, they believe China would never speak like this if Donald Trump was still president. I think maybe it's just escalation, whether it was Trump or Biden. There's been an ongoing escalating tension between, the two countries. But in terms of China calling the U.S. weak, and they did, we got this video of Joe Biden nearly falling down the stairs, which is getting a lot of attention. Now, Biden's saying it was just the wind. It was the wind. But a lot of people are questioning whether or not Joe Biden has the mental and physical fitness to be president. A new poll shows 33% of Americans believe he does not. So we're going to talk about this. We'll talk about some other stuff. I guess there's like a woke monopoly coming out, which will be fun to talk about. We're hanging out with the creator of the infamous The List, Siraj. You want to introduce yourself?
What's going on, Tim? Siraj Hashmi, now formerly employee of the Washington Examiner. I am a free agent and creator of The List, but you can also check me out on Habibi Bros. That is the podcast that me and Mujahid Kobe, my buddy Jay, who has been banned 12 different times by Twitter and constantly comes back. He is the man who cannot be killed on Twitter.
Should he go on the list?
Oh, well, that's the thing. Is the list only works for him, and I never put him on it.
There you go. Explain the list real quick.
All right, so the list is literally a power ranking of people who need their phones taken away. So, for example, if someone tweets something, a genuinely bad take, it could be comparing, say, Trump to Hitler, although that is actually very trite and commonplace. But something, for example, if the Chinese Communist Party tweets out something insane about the United States, knowing obviously how hypocritical it is, they'll go on the list for it.
Yeah. And then there's people like, should I name anybody specifically we're just talking about?
Jennifer Rubin.
Yeah.
She is the one
who, Washington Post, right?
Washington Post, formerly, I guess, conservative blogger.
Pro-establishment, whatever that means.
But basically, she has gone on the list. I can tell you, basically, one of the tweets that got her on the list was so benign, but it's so ridiculous. She posted a photo of her dog and saying, sleeping in during the Biden era.
Yes.
We sleep in on the weekends.
When Biden was bombing Syria?
Yeah. It was literally like the day or two after that.
Yeah. On the list. Right on. So we'll get into it. We got Ian. He's chilling.
What's up, everybody? Ian Crossland. How's it going? Great to be here. I love you.
And me, Sour Patch Lids in the corner.
All right. Before we get started, ladies and gentlemen, we have a really awesome sponsor. I've been talking a lot about how we need decentralized social media. And our sponsor today is POCKETNET. Go to POCKETNET.APP. You can see the link in the description below. Become a member. It is a truly, fully decentralized network. POCKETNET says no corporation, open source. Nobody can take your subscribers away. All advertising revenue goes directly to you as a content creator, owned and self-policed by users like you. Again, POCKETNET.APP. And the reason I think this is great, and I'm stoked that that POCKETNET is sponsoring the show, is one thing we keep talking about is some kind of open source code anybody can use to have their own decentralized social media platform or website. That way we can't get banned anymore. Now, maybe they'll still come after your infrastructure. Maybe you start your own website. But this is one way to guarantee that doesn't happen. There are a lot of different social media sites, but POCKETNET seems to be the first and only truly decentralized. So again, really grateful for their sponsorship. You guys can go to POCKETNET.APP, sign up, and I guess nobody can ban you. So, for better or for worse, we believe in free speech. When you're there, I guess you're going to have all the free speech in the world. Also, don't forget, go to timcast.com, become a member to get access to exclusive members-only segments of the show. We had Kurt Schlichter the other day talking about Rand Paul and Dr. Fauci. We had, Jack Murphy. We're talking about Joe Biden in that weird CGI video. That wasn't really CGI. We debunked that. And, of course, Lieutenant Colonel Alan West was on the show. So if you want to get those exclusive segments, go to timcast.com, become a member. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe this show. And let's get into the first story. This is the craziest thing to me. Let me just read the news first. The U.S. Sun reports, tense clash. China accuses U.S. of slaughtering black people, and says Americans have little faith in democracy as talk tensions flare. They said the two nations met face-to-face in Anchorage, Alaska on Thursday evening for the first time since President Joe Biden took office. But any hopes that bilateral relations could be reset after years of trade wars and tensions over cybersecurity during Trump's presidency were quickly stamped out. U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken and National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan opening the meeting by referring to concerns over Beijing's human rights record. China's top foreign affairs official Yang Jiechi thunderously responded by accusing the U.S. of its own human rights violations, saying, "We hope the U.S. will do better on human rights," Yang said during a 15-minute speech. The fact is that there are many problems in the U.S. regarding human rights, which is admitted by the U.S. itself. Yang added that human rights issues in the U.S., such as racism, were deep-seated. They did not just emerge over the past 4 years, such as Black Lives Matter. This is really annoying to me because the narrative, for the most part, from Black Lives Matter is overhyped, exaggerated, and just, I'm going to say it, not true. I don't know if, I think you may have seen this, Ian, but did you see the poll where they asked liberals and conservatives how many innocent, or how many black people were killed by police in 2019? And liberals said over 1,000. And the actual number is 27. So what's happening is, yeah, we have this media narrative, this big lie, where they keep saying these things over and over again. And you get these people who genuinely believe that cops are going around hunting down black people.
Right.
If I thought that was true, I'd be out there with Black Lives Matter every single day.
Yeah.
But we know it's not true. Any death caused by the cops, it's a tragedy. Either a cop was defending himself, it's still a tragedy. Or the cop was committing a crime, especially a tragedy. Now China is exploiting this. Our own media is tearing our country apart, in my opinion. And now China's accusing us of being weak.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. China obviously can't look in the mirror and ever call out their own sins. For example, obviously just how oppressive they are to their own people, the re-education camps of Uyghurs, the lack, basically the Hong Kong and threatening their autonomy. And jailing basically any political dissident. So they have obviously no moral standing on this issue. I just find it hilarious that they think that the U.S. government is sanctioning basically all this terrorism against one, racial demographic.
I don't think they believe it.
No, but they're accusing us of this.
I think it's really interesting. In previous administrations, would China have stood up so brazenly and insulted, degraded the United States to their faces?
Nope. The iron wasn't hot enough.
But you know what I think?
I mean, if you remember under the Obama administration and the plane situation, the plane confrontation, and they basically made them almost, I think it was they wouldn't let them land or get off the plane. They basically had to.
Oh wow.
Yeah, this happened under the Obama administration. Yeah. I don't know if this is something that it was almost an international incident that had to get stamped out quickly. Because China, they ramped up the aggression against, foreign diplomats, or I guess U.S. diplomats in this case. And then you have the whole anal swabs thing. Of U.S. diplomats entering the country, and they had to get a COVID test by that swab.
We'll jump to that one in a second, but the point I wanted to make is, as the tensions escalate, as U.S. Power wanes internationally, and other countries are losing confidence in whether or not the United States could even defend a place like Taiwan or the South China Sea, China is getting more and more brazen. They know the narrative's not true. They don't care. They're putting on a show for the people of the world to say, we're not scared of America anymore. Yeah. And we're going to stand up, and we're going to use their own fracturing of their culture against them. That's what's happening. Now, as for the butt swabs thing, which was a huge story, I think it's fair to say if Donald Trump was president, that would not have happened.
Yeah, that's fair to say. But I also, and we were talking about this, I don't think under the Trump administration, they would willingly send out a group of diplomats to China in the middle of a trade war, and basically subject themselves to something like this. I mean, during the trade war negotiations for the first trade deal that they agreed to, all the negotiations happened in Washington, D.C., literally across from the Eisenhower Executive Office Building, which is the White House.
But they're sending diplomats to China for what, routine work?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, we had an ambassador we had a U.S. ambassador to China, and we still have diplomatic relations with them. But, There is no reason to subject our own diplomats to that. It's just an embarrassment.
It's amazing. For those that aren't familiar, U.S. diplomats were forcefully anal swabbed by China.
Yeah.
And I think that's another sign of just attempting to humiliate the United States. Forceful swabbing of the bums of American personnel. And they're basically, look, at this meeting, it was 15 minutes of the Chinese, officials yelling at America. And the Americans just sat there and took it.
Saber rattling.
So I just wanted to point out that whole confrontation with the Obama administration. So the U.S. military always sends out a set of rolling air stairs on every single presidential trip. And so they have to seek Chinese approval to use the equipment. And when President Obama arrived in China, the Chinese reversed their position. They wouldn't let him get off the plane.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's like a
But
humiliation
why?
tactic.
Yeah.
But was Obama supposed to be there?
Yeah, it was. I think it was actually supposed to be a official presidential visit to meet with President Xi.
So this wouldn't have happened under Trump. Would you think it's fair to say?
Well, it didn't happen under Trump because when he went to China, he got like a huge welcoming ceremony. I mean, people remember obviously his meeting with Kim Jong Un in Vietnam and Singapore. I think it was just Singapore. They had at least 2 meetings, if I'm not mistaken. But when he went to China, there was a huge ceremony. There was a huge celebration of the U.S. president going to China. And if you remember correctly, President Xi and President Trump actually had deep affection for one another. But at the same time, Trump was telling everybody here in the United States, obviously we're going to be implementing all these tariffs on China. He had a lot of tough talk. And this is where he gets the criticism for being, cozying up to authoritarians because of how he approaches them. Now, his actual rhetoric is different from the actual policy because the policy was good, even if the rhetoric didn't match it. And I think that's what people constantly get at Trump for. But he was particularly strong on China, and Biden is particularly weak on China.
Could it have been that fanfare and that celebration was because they were scared of Trump?
That's possible.
Look, man, Trump was an erratic, bombastic guy.
We're still number 1, baby.
I look at it like this. Even people, even Trump supporters recognize that Trump is kind of, erratic, I guess is the right way to put it. Meaning he just says, do it, get it done. It pops into his head, he says, do it. So if he gets mad on a whim, he could be like, shut it down. No deal for you. So China knows this trade war is on.
Yeah.
The tariffs are a legit problem for them. So they start kissing his ass.
Yeah, I think the Chinese Communist Party is a glass cannon in that they're very fragile. From what I've been discerning from our guests in the last few weeks, they're on the verge of collapse, but they don't want to show it. And if they sense weakness, they're going to go and bite it because they can hit hard from a distance. But if they get attacked, they got a real problem. And Biden is not an attacker. Not physically.
I don't think the Chinese Communist Party is particularly weak. I think they're still on the rise. I think it is what's changing though is the what's the best word I could probably put it on? Sort of the image. There was a fallacy that Russia was somehow the most dangerous country in the world, and that was our geopolitical foe and threat. And they hijacked an election and basically installed Trump as, Putin's, lapdog. As crazy as that blue anon talk. But then everybody just ignored China, and now we're realizing everything that's happening there. You have the Uyghur re-education camps. You have Hong Kong autonomy withering away. You have the oppression of basically everyone and their political dissidents. They have the Belt and Road Initiative. Which basically it mortgages the future of basically every single country abroad that China does business with, particularly in Africa. They build up their infrastructure in exchange for they'll give, say, a country like Mozambique or name your country in Africa, $1 billion loans, but we get to control your ports.
It sounds
and they have
like
to pay back that loan.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like they're displacing the IMF.
Yeah.
That's the economic hitman strategy.
Right.
Yep.
And so they get all this economic control over these countries. and they get to gain access to their valuable resources, whatever mining, whatever, grain, you name it, farming. And they just consolidate that power. And the reason why they're still on the come up is, and this obviously is tied into the political oppression, is that when you only have one single thought, you can get a lot more done. I think Bill Maher was talking about it, as well as Tucker Carlson, interestingly enough, in the same week, about how China is particularly strong in their military.
You just
because
don't know it
they
yet.
just focus on the job and just get it done.
Right.
And I think Bill Maher's criticism in particular, it wasn't praiseworthy of
It's
the
a
Chinese
matter
Communist
of
Party,
give
but
and
really
take.
highlighting how because they're so authoritarian, they can get more done, and we are so democratic, we can get nothing done. And it's just
Democratic is one way to put it. I think what we're seeing is our values were exploited, sowing division, and this Western imperialism of sorts, whatever you want to call it, where we have like the International Monetary Fund, where we have the UN and NATO, the United States and their military bases everywhere. It's falling apart.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're mentioning, what was it? Was the Belt and
Road Initiative.
Yeah, so China is essentially giving loans, building up infrastructure in these countries to then have massive debt that will give them economic control. That's what the Western powers used to do.
Yeah.
Or still probably do.
Well, that's what colonialism was based on. It may not have been as, say, concrete as what the Belt and Road Initiative is, but it was basically controlling territories to gain access to the resources in exchange for, say, example, like French colonialism. French colonialism was basically, we're going to exchange whatever you got, and we're going to give you French culture, because that's like,
Right.
we're superior to your inferiority.
What we are seeing is China engaging in neo-colonialism. It's effectively just colonialism, but it's from history till now, they're starting up a new process.
Transactional.
Well, but it's not just that. It's Chinese immigrants. So China's a crowded nation. They're seeing a lot of, the creation of a lot of wealth as they expand. They then naturally want to move to other countries to find opportunity and to find more space.
I actually, interestingly enough, about the Belt and Road Initiative is that they don't even hire locally. They bring in their own workers from China to build up these, whatever level of infrastructure, roads, bridges, buildings, you name it, tunnels. It doesn't stimulate the local economy. All it does is just put these countries into debt and
That's right.
make them beholden to the Chinese Communist Party as a result.
Isn't that what the IMF would do, basically?
Yeah.
So listen, China is absolutely displacing the Western strategies and foreign policy, and they're sending in Chinese workers to a lot of countries. Many people who are just regular old citizens of China are naturally just emigrating to other countries. There's no plan there. They're just doing it because they want to move. They want to find a place. Then you end up with lots of Chinese immigrants in other countries setting up their own little communities and Chinatowns and things like that. Then you get the Belt and Road Initiative, which creates the economic power structure. Eventually, you're going to have many countries which are just going to be like second world satellites of China. If not, they already are. And the U.S., people don't seem to realize this. We talked about this, I think, earlier in the week, that manufacturing in the U.S. actually is up a little bit, like 1% year over year. But we don't produce all that much relative to many other countries. Our principal export is the U.S. dollar for buying oil. Mm-hmm. So we prop up the petrodollar with the threat of war to anybody who dares drop that dollar. The U.S. is in a very difficult position. It's, we've got Joe Biden, who apparently is struggling to walk up these stairs. The wind blew him over. I kid you not. They said the wind blew him over. I mean, that was not a good excuse. They could have said he tripped, and we could have moved on. But Joe Biden falls over and says, the wind blew him over. Wow. You've got hyperpolarization. You've got a 50-50 split, basically, in our government. Senate is 50-50, and then the House is like 219 to 211 or whatever. Like, just as narrow as it can get. They're trying to remove they're trying to remove a Republican who was duly elected and certified to it's falling apart. Our international systems are failing. The international wars have failed. Our way of controlling other countries is falling apart, and China is assuming all of it. And I have to wonder, how many special interests, millionaires, billionaires, and corporations in the U.S. have already seen that happening and are moving their businesses over to hedge their bets? Exactly.
That's been
right.
happening.
NBA, for instance.
Yeah. No, it's been happening for a while. Disney.
Apple.
Apple, yeah. I mean, manufacturing and manufacturing in China is really cheap, especially when they use Uyghur slave labor, right?
Right.
So,
Well, but thinking about it this way, if the U.S. dollar does crumble, Bitcoin's at 58,700 or whatever.
yeah,
These companies have already moved to China, and they're already like, you got Mark Cuban defending China. What does he see? That is he hedging his bet, basically saying he thinks China's going to win this one?
China's already won. That's actually what I wanted to say. Is that Bill Maher, interestingly enough, and I agree with him on a lot of points. Even if he didn't get everything right in his little monologue from last week, he pointed out how China already won.
Yeah.
They're not winning. They already won because the fact that we're still bickering over things like the culture war, cancel culture, you name it. These are things that are they're distractions to the bigger picture. And in terms of global influence, the United States are, that I saw a T-shirt once that said "We're number one," but there was no apostrophe in it.
We're number one.
We
Yeah.
were, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And so, while the United States economy still is number one in the world, as I said, we're number one, baby. I mean, those days
We're
are numbered.
number one.
It's like the Patriots dynasty ending.
I never really got into the whole we're the best thing, because when you're at the top, you're just a target. People want to rip you down. We
Right.
should be part of an integral group of allies that are working.
We
to
were
make-
though.
Yeah, we really should be
Like-
with Russia and Britain and England.
Well, not Russia,
England,
but
of
we
course.
did have Western trade alliances, NATO, the UN.
Yeah.
And that power structure is failing. I mean, look, the coalition that went into Libya, was it like France, the U.S., a couple other countries, I guess. Look at the coalition of the willing or whatever going to Iraq. It wasn't just the U.S. It was a bunch of different countries expressing this, control.
I mean, after 9/11, there was they invoked Article 5 of NATO, getting us to the point where we had every NATO nation, as well as we got Australia, New Zealand involved in basically the invasion of Afghanistan, which then turned into the invasion of Iraq. I mean, for some reason, the United States loves war. We're never going to get out of it, and that has depleted our economy tremendously. And if you ever want to talk about how climate change impacts it, it doesn't help it.
You guys ever hear of the non-aligned movement?
Nah.
It's basically the other United Nations on Earth. There's the United Nations that we know of, and then all the countries that aren't involved with it are in this united group of nations called the non-aligned movement.
Who's in it?
Iran is it's where they're headquartered. Was in Iran for a while. Ahmadinejad was like the chairman of it.
Ahmadinejad.
Yeah, thank you for pronouncing that properly.
Mahmoud Ahmadinejad.
And I would pull up a list. There's like 92 countries or something.
Really?
Some insane number. And don't quote me on that number. But it's all these countries that the United States is basically doesn't want to have diplomatic ties with. These are the people we need to be allied with.
Yeah.
Well, there's also BRICS, the BRICS nations.
I mean, that's the thing so Iran and the United States their interests are diametrically opposed. Iran wants basically hegemony over the region. The United States, the Iranian regime has been on the path of terror for quite some time, funneling money to Hamas, Hezbollah, you name it. And they've been killing our guys and our men and women overseas. I don't imagine that's going to happen anytime soon, unless, of course, President Biden tries to get the Iran nuclear deal going on again. God help us if that happens. But look, I am fine with making friends with other countries, so long as it isn't to our detriment. We're not being taken advantage of, and I don't think that the Iranian regime would be acting in good faith.
I'm looking at China, like the Nazi Party, and if we had allied with Russia before the Nazis invaded Poland, we could have possibly prevented it.
What do you mean?
Well, because we weren't really on good terms with Russia before the war, Russia wouldn't come to France's aid.
Are you talking about World War II?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so this is like a modern day, we're on the cusp of another world war with another, racist ethno-state.
Right.
And unless we ally now with Russia and India and Iran and all of these countries around China, they're going to do some crazy invasion.
Well, the thing is, China and Iran are basically in bed with each other. Because, when Iran doesn't have, any of its allies to go to, if it doesn't have the United States to go to say, funnel them cash, they'll go to Russia and they'll go to China. Because China definitely wants to have them on their side.
Yeah.
Anyone who's an enemy of the United States is their friend. Mm-hmm. So
And like we're talking about, it's China doing everything in their power to expand their influence to anyone who's willing to listen. And I think that I wonder if there's elements of the U.S. that are worried about war, so they're already essentially resigning to the fact that we will lose. I think it was we were talking with Kurt. He said there's war games that the U.S. has done with China, and all of these war games we just lose. I can only imagine there's a lot of really rich people who are probably like, all right, well, if that's inevitable, I'm going to move my money over. I'm going to move my money to China and focus on that business. And then in 50 years, when this whole system in the West falls apart, China will be the dominant superpower, and you will have an authoritarian ethno-state exerting their cultural influence over all the other countries on the planet.
I would argue, obviously, and I don't know if I said this before, but if it sounds like I'm repeating myself, then I apologize. But I think Richard Nixon's greatest mistake was not anything to do with Watergate. It actually had to do with opening the United States to China. Because for some reason, I don't know what miscalculation took place, but it was a miscalculation. And that was assuming that the Chinese Communist Party,
Fortunately,
at that time,
I won't have to remember this.
About 20, 21 years after the Chinese Civil War, after World War II, that by introducing capitalism to them, they would somehow modernize. And what they did is they basically adapted. They kept their system in place, and they basically turned their society into a pseudo-capitalist one that encouraged commerce and encouraged other corporations from other countries, namely from the United States, to come to them, get cheap manufacturing, build their products, and then ship it across the globe. And they did it by consolidating as much power as they needed to, and by they, I mean the Chinese Communist Party. And we're basically at a loss.
We underestimated China.
100%.
We thought money and greed would win out, and we underestimated the resolve and the ideology and the power of the Chinese Communist Party. So we were hoping that our money was going to go in, and that essentially greed, not necessarily greed, but like commerce and a better life would open up the eyes of these people, and they would say, oh, we should do that because it'll make us money. And then eventually that would weaken the power structure in the Communist Party. They didn't realize how hardened it was. So what ended up happening was the Communist Party exploited all those systems around it to become even more powerful.
Yeah.
And we just fed the beast.
We also underscore and probably we discount the Confucius Institutes here in the United States.
Yeah.
That's it is a very real problem, but not one that's discussed very often. And that is how a number of different universities in the United States have these institutes called Confucius Institutes. And what they do is that they basically, it's like exporting the ideas of the Chinese Communist Party to, malleable minds here in the United States. But also, you can look at the Chinese exchange students who come to the United States. And I'm not saying that them coming here is bad, but what ends up happening is they start to adapt, or they start to adopt some values that we here in America embrace. They start to get, maybe think that like American values are actually much better than Chinese values, and they correct that issue right away. They have like sort of a self-policing system, and so if any exchange student gets out of line, they're gone.
Yeah, I think, man, it's like we're on the back end of that bell curve. It's the golden age is over for us.
We've been infiltrated.
It's been real, guys.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Great. Video games were fun.
Buy Bitcoin. No financial advice. I'm buying Bitcoin.
Buy GameStop.
Because China
actually don't buy GameStop.
No, China bought a bunch of Bitcoin. A lot of Bitcoin.
Oh, yeah.
So I wonder why it's skyrocketing, man.
They've got the Chinese spy that was dating the guy, the
Eric Swalwell.
For like
Well, that
long?
wasn't confirmed that they were dating.
Or they were an item for
It wasn't even
a
confirmed
decade
that
or
they were an
something?
item.
She was just helping with like fundraisers
Yeah.
and stuff. That was
for a
what she
long
was.
time, right?
Yeah, I mean, she had been around helping people with fundraising here in Washington, D.C., and I wouldn't say here because we're not in Washington, D.C., that's where I live, but basically when it comes to, I believe her name is Feng Feng, and or Christine Feng, I think that's
Feng Feng.
Feng Feng. Sorry, I apologize.
We had China Uncensored on the show, and so we got the correct pronunciation.
Oh, Chinese Uncensored. Nice. So Feng Feng, she had basically embedded herself as a sort of like a I guess not like a money roller, like basically someone who would a cash bundler.
Yeah.
That's the best way to put it. Someone who would raise money for different political causes, and then somehow throughout the running of it all, Eric Swalwell was briefed that she's actually a Chinese spy, and then he basically had to sever all contact with her. But
Now, this just happened. McCarthy has tried to remove Swalwell from the Intel Committee over the Chinese spy story. So this is just from the other day.
Oh, wow.
I believe it did fail, though. They said the resolution will not likely pass in a Democratic-controlled House. Think about how insane this is. This dude was being helped, a Democrat, by a Chinese spy. And they're keeping him on the Intel Committee. It's like, okay, let him stay in office, but don't give him access to Intel reports.
Mm-hmm.
They don't care. They really don't care. That's why I'm saying, man, I wonder how many of these people are in on the take. They know what's coming, and
there are
they're
too
like,
many of 'em.
you got to butter my bread. You know what I mean?
How many more spies are there? That's one that we found out, and now we know that the institutions have been infiltrated by basically by the concepts of this, 80-year plan that Yuri Bezmenov talked about it. Other people, it's like they've been in here trying to divide us, and now they're calling it out.
Yeah.
Because their plan, they're basically activating the plan.
Well, we do know that there was a Chinese spy that worked in Senator Dianne Feinstein's office.
Yeah. Driver?
I think so. I have to confirm that. But
So this is this is from back in August of 2018.
Yeah.
Details surface about Senator Feinstein and the Chinese spy who worked for her. That's crazy.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure it was a driver for her.
Yeah.
And it's not the first time. We've been infiltrated, man. I mean, Mike Pompeo was saying it earlier last year, about a year ago. He said we've been infiltrated at every single level. You name it.
yeah, I mean, it's not surprising at all. I mean, as you said, when you're number one, everyone has a target on your back. Basically every other country, if we're playing Mario Kart, we're in first place. Every country has a blue shell.
Yep.
Yeah.
100%,
Well,
essentially.
we were in first place. I wonder if/when China does overtake us, maybe they already did, and they're just not going to let us know. You know what I mean?
Well, why would they let us know if they could stay in our ranks forever? I mean,
And focus all the
not
blue
to
shells on
mention-
us and not them?
And also, not to mention, think of the people who are actually and this is something that people think, oh, just because the Chinese, they have to be a spy. Think about all the non-Chinese spies that there are. I mean,
Well, think about-
they are spies for the Chinese government, but they're not.
Right.
They're not ethnically
Right.
Chinese.
But also think about when COVID first started, and they lied to the WHO, and then the WHO ended up lying to the world. China ordered Chinese citizens in various countries to buy personal protective equipment and ship it back to China so they could use it during the pandemic. While they were lying to us, saying everything's fine, don't worry about it, they were instructing their citizens. These people weren't spies. They were just people who were living in other countries for school or for whatever reason, working at the behest of the Chinese Communist Party.
It makes me think of Civilization, the game. Have you ever played that?
It's been a while.
Cool game. And I think the Chinese have overtaken us militarily, but not culturally, not scientifically, I don't think.
No, they stole all our intellectual property.
They steal. They
Right.
basically are trying to steal to keep up. So they have
surpass.
overtaken us in some ways, definitely militarily, I think.
What's that thing where the 1,000 Talents program where they're buying up these college professors, offering them cash, then professors are lying about it, getting caught and getting arrested?
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah. There's been a bunch of professors now
I missed
who
that.
were secretly taking money from China, and then some of them got caught. They were not reporting this money. So they were getting grants from the U.S. government and also getting money from the Chinese government.
My God.
And effectively, my understanding is they were sharing this data with the Chinese
Dude, I
Communist
just think
Party.
Nazis. Think about it. If you were alive in 1930, what side would you have been on? Now you get to choose. Will you take their money? Will you take that Nazi money?
There were a lot of people in America who did.
That's the
do.
problem. Is
Yeah.
that there are too many people who, and this is obviously because hindsight's 2020. We always look back and think of if another Holocaust happened, how would we react to it?
It's happening.
I mean, it is happening.
Yeah, but that's the thing is everybody thought that, and I referenced the Syrian civil war because that seemed like an interesting, that was a very bloody affair that has winded down. But there were a lot of people in the United States clamoring for intervention, thinking that that was basically another genocide that was taking place. And then we have this situation here in Xinjiang with the Uyghurs being locked up in re-education camps. We're seeing drone footage of them on train platforms, all in jumpsuits, blindfolded, shaved heads, hands and feet bonded up. And that is the closest thing I have ever seen in my life to what we saw in the Holocaust. Closest thing. And I'm still afraid to compare that to the Holocaust because of what that suggests. And so you can say that they're going to modern day concentration camps. That is like as far as that's to the extent that I'll go, because there is these people are being persecuted for practicing their faith. There are people being persecuted for expressing different political views, for people who want democracy in Hong Kong, and all of our nothing will move. No needle will move in the right direction because all of the corporations that were formerly part of the United States have all sold their souls to China.
This time
will never stand up.
Right.
For it.
A lot of them, not all of them.
This time,
Not all of them,
the
but a lot of them.
ethno-authoritarians, it seems like they're going to win.
It seemed like that with the Nazis too for a while. When they invaded France and took control of France, it was like, this is it, man. The British, Winston Churchill would just tell people, we're going to survive. We're going to get through this. He didn't know. He was just getting their hopes up.
For sure.
China's not stupid enough to just storm the borders of India necessarily.
Right.
I mean, the conflict happening on the border with India is that what was it? They were fighting with sticks and stones.
Yeah.
Because they know there's going to be fighting, but they know what propaganda is. They know how information warfare works, and they know what will happen if all the people of the world demand conflict. It's bad enough they got the concentration camps, but a lot of people still will be like, we're not going to do war. It would wipe out the planet. If they stormed into India with guns and took land, then everyone would freak out and say it's happening. It's happening anyway.
Yeah.
We got to stop it from happening. So they know better. They're going to infiltrate. It's going to be cyber attacks. It's going to be political warfare. Like who was talking about political warfare? Was that
James?
Was that
We've
James?
had some great
it?
guests on
Not
this
sure.
last
Or was
week.
it Kurt? I don't know. Lot of great people talking about political warfare, and that I think it was James.
I think so.
And we're not prepared for it. They know you got to be very careful about how people view you, and that's why I think when we see these Chinese officials yelling at the U.S. in a rant for 15 minutes saying that the U.S. is slaughtering black people, they know what they're doing. They're trying to show the world they can make God bleed, because then there will be blood in the water and the sharks will come.
Yeah, I mean, so Eddie Izzard, the comedian, although I think that's former name. I apologize if I'm getting it wrong.
Eddie
That was
Izzard,
right.
yeah.
Yeah, I saw
Yeah.
that recently.
No,
Yeah.
but
Wears dresses from time to time.
Yeah, dresses in drag.
but that might be
He
a dead
runs
name.
marathons.
That might be the dead name.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Did
No,
he change
no.
his name?
I think so.
No,
I
I
didn't
saw
know.
him recently, and he
He's
still
amazing.
He still goes by
What a
Eddie,
genius.
she,
As far as I
or
can
she
tell.
goes by
No
Eddie Izzard.
worries.
I apologize.
I think he was
Either
a
he or she.
cross-dresser, but was not transgender.
Anyways,
I
Eddie
could be
Izzard,
wrong.
the comedian,
Yes.
said something that was really prescient at the time, and it was sort of like analyzing history and how the biggest mistake that Hitler made was not anything he had to do within Germany, but it was invading other countries. Because you have Mao Zedong, killed probably the most people of any other dictator. You had Joseph Stalin, you had Pol Pot, a number of different dictators. The key theme for them, and the reason they were able to stay in power, is that they never invaded any other countries.
Yep.
And so China came close to it when you had the Korean War, and they were basically trying to impose communism in the Korean Peninsula. Of course, the United States fought back at it, went to stalemate. Now you have North Korea.
And now you have China invading many other countries with the Belt and Road Initiative.
Exactly.
Economically,
Exactly.
culturally.
Look, you can't. We talk about this all the time. 4th and 5th generational warfare. What is the purpose of war? You want to gain control of resources and territory, right? Or you want to stop a threat. Maybe it's preemptive war, but usually it's about gaining access to a resource and certain territory for some advantage for your country. Now, how are you going to do that? You're going to march in with guns and force people at gunpoint? Well, that creates resistance and opposition.
Right.
People say no to that. Or you say, Ian, I'm going to lend you $100 so you can go get that nice new suit you wanted.
Thanks, dude.
And then we're going to put compounded interest on it. So just
Oh.
don't worry, sign here. And then what happens?
Well, I do need the suit.
A week goes by, and I go, "Where's that $10,000 you owe me, buddy?" And you're like, "Whoa, 10,000?" Like, yeah, read the deal. Jimmy, break his legs. That's the game.
Can I borrow another 10,000?
They go to,
back?
listen,
Don't do it.
they're going to these people, and they're going to these countries and saying, if you sell your country to me with this deal, you will live like the king of kings. And then when you're dead, we'll take your country. It's a win-win, isn't it? And a lot of these people are like, works for me. The country will improve, the lives of my people will improve, and then in 50 years, China will be in charge with exercising debt and
Don't
control over our
worry.
country.
This
Sure,
is all
whatever.
just an illusion. It's
Short-term
how you
gain,
play
long-term
the hand
losses.
you're dealt.
They are invading, but they're doing it smart this time.
The hitmen,
They learned from us.
The economic hitmen, which is kind of out of this playbook, they would do that. They would say, hey, we're going to give you a big loan, try and buy you out. And if the people refused, then they would try and assassinate the leader. And if they couldn't get to the guy, then they would declare all-out war. It seems like the Chinese aren't trying step 2 at all. They're very light about this slow, long bribery
They
game.
play the long game.
But listen,
Now we've
Definitely.
got a fight
you
on
only
our
need step
hands.
1. When they go to one country and say,
Did that
we're
just
going to give you all
happen?
this money to help you with your infrastructure, and that country says no, they go, okay, well, then we'll give it to your neighbor. Good luck surviving. And they'll go, wait. That's the name of the game. People know that in these countries, they might have pressure where it's like, we've got conflict with these different groups, with these different tribes, with these different countries, governments. And so if China starts arming and building up their infrastructure, how long will you last? That's how it's going to play out. And now you can see with these Chinese officials basically making a mockery of the U.S., saying you're not coming from they literally said, it is wrong to say you're coming from a position of strength. People in your own country don't trust your own democracy. You're slaughtering black people. They smack down the U.S. for 15 minutes. And what do? We fight. We have flame wars. We have culture wars. We are a silly people. I think the U.S. is facing some kind of fracturing. But a lot of people talk about a peaceful divorce. I think we've already broken apart. You know, and I talked about this before, right? Joe Biden comes out and says, come on, man, we need new restrictions for COVID. And Texas and Florida are like, nah. If you don't have red states trusting the president and agreeing to work together towards a common goal, then the president just represents the blue states. Maybe they're, look, I'm a young guy, I guess, young enough. Maybe there were periods in American history where half the states were saying no to the president. Maybe that was 100 and some odd years ago, the last time we had a civil war, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're going to civil war.
It's not going to be what you think it is. It's not going
Well,
to be
the civil war is informational.
right.
It's not with arms.
That's exactly what I'm saying. It's
Yeah.
4th and 5th generational warfare.
Yeah.
So the point I'm making is we're well past that point. Like, China's not going to march into India with guns. They're going to buy more and more land. They're doing it. They're buying up property in the U.S. like crazy. They're buying up property in Brazil like crazy. And then their citizens naturally just move into these areas and then live in these places using the existing laws. They don't need to march in with guns when they can march in with economics. Same thing in the United States. The civil war we're experiencing is the culture war. It is a cold civil war. I shouldn't even say it's cold because people have literally been shot and killed, notably in Portland, for instance. But it's not like factions with armies marching towards each other. The issue is, the best example is Joe Biden comes out, talks about COVID, Florida, Texas, other red states. Just look at Joe Biden and say, buzz off. We do not take your advice, and we do not care what you think. So you got blue states saying, you got it, Joe, and red states saying, we don't agree with the president. We are already split into two different realities. You want to live like normal? Florida's awaiting. You don't got to wear a mask anymore. You can go shopping, you can go to the movies. Everything's back to normal. Go to New York. New York is now the epicenter again. And they're saying, oh, no, it's bad. We got to do more lockdowns. You go to Europe. Europe's locking down like crazy.
Yeah.
Here in the U.S., to see blue states go the exact opposite direction of red states. No unity at all.
I do find that interesting, though, that, the division has been happening for a while. I mean, just look at, you go rewind 10 years ago. I mean, think of how many states just rejected, Obamacare coming into their states.
Exactly.
And
That's why a lot of people do believe Obama was the time that this division happened. But I'm like, look,
I think it started before that.
Right, you can reduce it further and further. Look at Al Gore and George W. Bush.
Yeah.
It was a Supreme Court appointment of a president. No matter what you believe, there's half the country who believes Bush only became president because the Supreme Court intervened.
Right.
Now, there's a lot of people who say, no, George Bush won fair and square. No. The realities are divergent at that point. There's Democrats who are saying it was stolen. And there you go.
Yeah.
Then you get 8 years of that. Then Obama comes in. Then you get people were claiming it was stolen back then. Like even Donald Trump was saying that, Mitt Romney.
And the interesting thing about that is a lot of people tied the Supreme Court fight of the 2000 election to distracting our intelligence agencies from what Al-Qaeda was up to in the lead up to 9/11.
Right.
Because there was no transition. The transition was so it was so rocky.
It was
between
delayed
the
and it was busted
Clinton-
up.
Yeah, between the Clinton and the Bush administrations, that a lot of people look at that as the one area where Al Qaeda basically made its move to basically attack the United States through 9/11.
I think that was where we saw a big political split. But an interesting thing happened in 2008 with the economic crisis, because we had Ben Stewart here. He was talking about Strauss-Howe generational theory. Are you familiar with that?
No, I'm not.
It's this theory that there are 4 seasons. A season lasts 20 years. You've got spring, summer, fall, and winter. After winter, this great conflict, this great crisis, comes a spring where everything is really good. The economy blossoms and booms. Then you have a summer where it's maintained and people are happy. Then a fall where things start getting shaky and chaotic. And then a winter again where the chaos breaks out. So right now, we are in the winter period. 80 years ago, the end of the last winter was World War II. 80 years before that, it was the Civil War. 80 years before that, the Revolutionary War. And apparently they've mapped out like all of these things that have happened every 80 years because it's based on generations. Are you familiar with that saying? Strong men make good times. Strong men make good times make weak men make hard times make strong men.
Yes.
It's similar to that idea
challenge.
that when you have a generation of people who
always
fought
an
through the
answer.
trenches and many who didn't survive, only the strongest survive and come back and create a flourishing, strong society of prosperity. Their children inherit that world and don't necessarily understand what it took to create it. The next generation inherits a world where they just feel entitled to it, which leads to chaos and collapse.
Interesting.
So it feels like, we're basically in this period now where we can expect,
I just
I
want to
guess,
get in, get out, and
the
finish
winter
the
is
job.
here. It's going to get bad, and it's supposed to end around 2028. But my point was, the point I wanted to get to with 2008 was when we talk about when the political divide started and when chaos started to happen, they predicted in in the 90s when they wrote this book called The Fourth Turning, that in 2008, when boomers became eligible for Social Security, the economic system was going to collapse.
Right.
Perhaps everything we know about what caused
I'm
the
just
crisis,
gonna
mortgage-backed
fade
securities and things like that, was actually just all of the boomers now demanding their entitlements that didn't exist and figuring out how to cover it up. Not cover it up, but like cover the costs of this. When you look at the M1 money supply, it's slowly stagnant over several decades. 2008 happens, it increases by by a factor of 10 or whatever. It's just like spikes upward. Money creation is going up rapidly. Then the pandemic hits, skyrockets straight up. They changed the way they report the money stock mid-pandemic, and now no one knows for sure. But you can see 2008, where the money supply just goes boom and takes a sharp turn upward. Maybe mortgage-backed security crisis, they were giving out homes to everybody and people couldn't pay for it. Or maybe our financial system was broken. We knew it was broken. It was predicted that it was going to break, and then it broke.
I've heard that this theory that they used COVID as an excuse to print because they had to print because everything was falling apart.
It's a conspiracy. Was it you who was telling me this? Someone I think it was you who mentioned this. They were saying that Democrats made bad
always
bets
an
and
answer.
investments that went sour and was going to completely disrupt pensions and 401ks and retirement plans. Was it you who said that?
No.
Who told us that?
I don't remember hearing that.
Yeah, I was hearing there's a conspiracy theory that what actually happened was COVID's legit, and we had a pandemic, we had a crisis, and we had 15 days to slow the spread. However, the economic crisis was real. We're supposed to have, they say every 10 years there's like an economic downturn of some sorts, and we kind of dodged that for some reason. I heard a conspiracy theory. I'm not saying it's true. I'm saying it's literally probably not true. That Democrats made bad bets with, unions made bad bets. They made bad investments. The investments soured. And then when COVID hit, they knew that there was going to be a serious collapse of retirement funds and people's 401ks and things like that. So they were like, we need a bailout. We saw all these blue states. Now, this part is true. Cuomo, for instance, being like, New York needs money. And Trump was like, shove it. Too bad. Run your state better. Now we get the $1.9 trillion stimulus. And Republicans are calling it a bailout for blue states that are poorly managed.
Well,
So I don't know. I don't know about those conspiracies.
they had the $2.2 trillion stimulus a year ago.
Right. And it's covering look, New York's crumbling. The Metro, for instance, the MTA, they're struggling to repair it. They're not making enough money as to how much it costs. So you had that whole situation with AOC where Amazon was going to come in, bring these 40,000 jobs, potentially $30 billion over 10 years. They needed that money to fix their train systems. It didn't happen.
And I guess, interestingly enough, with the amount of people that are probably leaving New York because of the lockdowns, I can imagine they're probably going to be making way for, a vacuum of sorts.
But I wonder, man. I mean, Bill de Blasio said he's going to buy up these buildings, turn it into public housing. I wonder if the economy is just worse than we realize, and they're not going to tell us because panic would only make it worse, right?
Well, yeah, obviously.
If they came out and said, my fellow Americans, several large unions with hundreds of thousands of members put their money in dangerous places and lost the retirements of millions of middle-class Americans. This is going to result in a ripple effect that wipes out. If they said something like that,
Yeah.
people would freak out.
Oh, 100%. Everybody crash the banks.
Remember what George W. Bush said after 9/11?
Which part?
How old are you?
I'm 33.
All right, so you should remember this.
Yeah.
He said, go buy stuff. He said, go buy
Yeah.
stuff.
Well, because the 9/11 attack was, in addition to being an actual terrorist attack on the people, it was an attack on their financial center.
And what he was basically saying was, if you want to help, go out and buy things to keep the economy moving. When that attack happened and people are panicking, you get a natural reaction from a lot of people to stock up, store up, save your money, and bunker down.
Right.
And he was like, no, the machine's got to keep churning. You need to keep the machine going so we generate taxes, so we can pay for this stuff, so we can build new things. Go buy stuff. That's a scary prospect because that can't last forever, can it?
Right.
So I don't know exactly, if any of these conspiracies are true. I would actually argue they're probably not. That's why we call them conspiracies. But I will say you can look at the crisis in 2008, the mass printing of money. It was only a matter of time before we were going to see that bubble burst. It could not be maintained.
Do you remember how much the 2008 bailout was for?
It was like for $989 million.
Yeah, that was
billion.
That was what was on the books. I'm
That's
reading
billion.
an
Yeah,
article
not
here from
million. That's too small.
this article
Yeah.
from MIT quotes a 2015 Forbes article that says we've paid back 4.6 trillion of the 16.8 trillion that we committed to that bailout over I don't know how many years, 15 or 20 years or something. Now, this is Forbes reporting that.
Okay.
I don't. If we secretly committed 16 trillion in 2008 and we're still paying it back, maybe that's another explanation for why they just flooded the market with $12 trillion.
I mean, dude, the Federal Reserve, the fractional reserve system, it is a stack of cards. It is literally a Ponzi scheme, and it works because we have guns. So at a certain point, it's gonna fall apart. Like, you guys understand how banking in this country works, right?
Fractional reserve, as far as I understand, is the Federal Reserve will loan a bank $1 million. The bank then can loan out 90% of that, so they can loan out 900,000.
They need to keep 10% on reserve,
Yeah.
but they're not. That loan is creating the money supply. So
Right.
when you give $100 to a bank, they can then loan out $90, which is created on the books.
And then
Expanding the
to
money
another
supply.
bank. Then that other bank takes that 90 and can loan out
Well,
81.
No, not necessarily. They loan it to you. So they give you. So I put $100 in the Bank of Ian. Then the Bank of Ian is able to give a $90 loan to the Bank of to Siraj as an individual. Siraj
I
then
don't get my own bank?
you don't get your own bank.
Not yet.
But then you deposit your
Soon, though.
$90. You deposit your $90 into the Bank of Lydia. Now Lydia can loan out 90%.
Whoa. This sounds a little bit racist.
Talk about it.
Well, I don't got a bank either.
Oh, I thought you just
Hey,
said
wait,
you had a bank.
Change the Federal Reserve here.
So the point is, a bank gives an individual money. The individual puts it in a bank. That bank then loans out. Then an individual puts it back in a bank. So it's just basically a stack of cards.
Right.
It's basically a game of hot potato, and where the debt keeps stacking up, the interest becomes impossible to pay, and then Obama signs a massive stimulus. The money printing goes out of control. This was predictable a long time ago. I mean, when did we go off the gold standard? That was in the
1970, I think.
70s.
Yeah, the 72,
72.
73 shock.
You
Nixon
know,
shock.
you know what the issue there was? It's really, really simple. If all four of us here in this room are trading, $1 between each other. So it's like I give Ian $1 in exchange for a high five, then Ian gives Siraj $1 in exchange for a high five. The only way to get that high five is to have the dollar and make it to you. So at one point I decide, you know what? I don't want to have to give away a high five to get that dollar. I want all the high fives for myself. So I tell all of you, hey guys, I'm going to manage the money printer. Don't worry, I'll make sure everything's good. And then when you guys aren't paying attention, I just print money for myself. I don't do any work. Basically what happens is We're able to fund all of these wars and all this conflict because the Fed can print out money, loan it to whoever they want without contributing anything to society. We've got missing trillions of dollars on the books or whatever from the Pentagon, some nonsense. We've not audited the Fed. We need to figure out how much money is being printed, who it's going to, and we don't know. At a certain point, if they can just snap their fingers and create money on the books and we don't understand the system, other people are exploiting it, the house of cards is going to fall over.
Yeah.
That's it.
And, I mean, you inspired me to make a great idea. I'm definitely going to start charging people for high fives.
Yes.
That's the way to go.
Yeah,
Specifically kids.
You know, this is another aspect of the situation that bothers me is the oil economy because it's so obvious that we're moving off an oil economy onto like a nuclear economy or something.
Well, but people still have an aversion to nuclear, so I don't think that's going to happen.
Right, nuclear fission. People
Yeah.
are afraid of the dirtiness of corium meltdowns, but like fusion or like thorium reactors, which are also a type of nuclear, which isn't dirty, doesn't have corium byproduct. So we're I mean, it's amazing tech, but there's this massive resistance because if we go off oil, they can't extort the rest of the world to use our dollar anymore.
They bring up a valid point. I mean, think of how much oil runs our society, and moving off of that. I mean, that's why there's such a huge push to obviously not go towards solar and wind. It's because it's not efficient.
There. Right.
It's not efficient.
We need batteries.
But also because the entire push is obviously like, you know, you got to focus on the coal industry. You got to focus on the oil and gas industry. And, you know, we as a nation are very conservative when it comes to changing where we're getting that money
like
from.
the battery industry. Elon Musk had to make a company to build them.
I know.
Because the government wouldn't do it.
Well, why should the government do it anyway?
So that we can get us off oil. But they don't want us off oil. They want us to keep buying tanks of oil to keep in our base.
Right.
And that's probably what, I mean, besides what people think of Elon Musk's opinions, I mean, Elon Musk is in many ways, he is a trailblazer because he is creating a renewable source of energy, but also commercializing space flight. And to the powers that be, whatever that may be, that's a threat. Because, you know, if you cede that power to Elon Musk.
One word, bro. China. They're not going to stop using fossil fuels.
Right.
Fossil fuels have an excellent energy return on energy invested. So we, these good and noble Americans, know that solar, wind, geothermal, hydro, tidal and hydro, dam electricity, all of these things are great, cleaner alternatives. They don't produce that carbon emission, but they don't have a high enough return on the energy investment. In fact, to build solar panels requires a ton of oil. Wind turbines as well. Plus, we don't have the batteries for them. So
the batteries.
Yeah. So we need a continuous supply. So fusion is would be fantastic. Nuclear power, absolutely, but the activists don't want that either.
Yeah.
And I have to wonder why that is, because that can really make us powerful.
Obfuscation.
I mean, if someone figures out a way to make a car run on dreams and starlight, it's over.
Oh yeah, definitely. Because then we're gonna build spaceships and
Let's do it.
rockets and
Well,
lasers.
Theoretically, what would happen if we went off the oil economy? Not that we stopped using it, but that we stopped relying on it tomorrow because everyone had batteries and could charge everything.
Well, we'd still have to kill people overseas.
Right. Yeah.
We got to make sure that we're bombing those kids. Otherwise, these other rambunctious countries will stop, bending the knee to us.
Oh my God.
Would China gain power or lose power in the hegemony?
If we get off the petrodollar, China it's done. They take over.
Because we couldn't extort our allies to fight for us?
Allies? Who do you
Yeah.
think we're extorting?
I
We're
don't know,
extorting.
whoever's buying our oil.
What are you talking about? Everybody hates us.
Yeah. Here's
Even
how
our allies hate
here's-
Is Britain buying our oil?
everybody.
Everybody.
Here's
buys
how.
it.
Here's
We're
how.
a net exporter of oil.
It's not just that. Let's say you're the country of Ian, right? And I'm the United States.
Oh, do I get my own country this
Yeah.
time?
Yeah, you're actually you're the
Lististan?
federation.
The Grand Principality of
Federation
Sriracha.
of the list.
Yes.
The federation of the list. It's multiple countries.
There you go.
You get multiple countries.
Excellent.
So we've got this trade federation over here, and we got the country of Ian, and I'm the United States. Okay, I want oil. It's really simple. Hey, Fed, print me $1 trillion so I can buy oil. They do, I buy oil. Thanks, guys, for all your hard work. Then Ian says, yo, I want oil too. Okay, well, if you want these dollars, you got to pay up. Give me your money and I'll give you some dollars.
I'll give you some of my Ian currency, and you're like, no. You need my currency to buy my oil. So
Exactly.
You need to buy my currency first.
It's not my oil. It's your oil. You produced it in your country, and we force you to put it on the international market. And if you want to buy it back, you buy dollars from us first. Now, your trade federation, same deal. It's the oil produced in your own country is put on the international market. If you want some of it, you got to buy it in U.S. dollars. So trade for me, and I'll give you what I think is fair. What ends up happening is many countries have to be net exporters in order to keep the strength of their currency sound, so they can buy U.S. dollars in order to buy oil, even if it's produced by them or someone else. So we know what happens to countries that talk about getting off the petrodollar. Muammar Gaddafi, he wanted to trade in dinars. He died.
Cuba,
Too bad.
Venezuela, North Korea.
Saddam Hussein, he said, why not the euro? And he died. It's a really weird coincidence how that happens. You know what I mean?
Maduro's a villain.
And then there's the
Venezuela.
Qatar-Turkey pipeline, right? The U.S. wanted to build a natural gas pipeline through Syria and Turkey into Europe. And then Syria fell into civil war. What a coincidence.
Yeah.
It's really funny how all that goes down, isn't it?
That is
Yeah, so
interesting.
if we stop using, if oil stops being that principal source of energy, then we don't have leverage over these other countries.
Fiscally, yeah.
Yeah, if fusion technology became rampant, like just ubiquitous, and then all of a sudden we go to, this one country and we're like, yo, you've been calling to buy dollars and oil from us. And they're like, oh, we got fusion. We're good. Really good example. You guys ever watch Rick and Morty?
Yep. I know exactly what you're talking about. The battery.
The battery
Yeah,
episode,
battery
right?
episode.
So
it just sounds like slavery with extra steps.
Yeah.
Exactly. So in this show, Rick, his car breaks down, and his battery is a microverse or whatever.
Right.
Mini, I don't know what it is.
It's a microverse. Yeah.
Yeah. So inside it, he's got this like little universe where he tells all these people to step on these like platforms.
It's like a DDR. Like, like
Dance
a bike
Dance
pedal,
Revolution.
Yeah, Dance Revolution.
And it generates electricity, which he siphons some off of. But then there's a scientist in that universe who creates another microscopic universe. And so basically what happens is Rick shows up and he's like, yo, what's going on? You're not making electricity anymore. And they're like, don't worry, we figured it out. We don't need you anymore. So then he threatens to destroy their universe unless they get back to generating his power for him. So the U.S., if we get one of these smaller countries, some small Middle Eastern country, all of a sudden they boom, fusion ignition. They got clean running energy. It is generating tons and tons of power, and they go, we don't need oil anymore. Well, all of a sudden, the U.S. is going to be like, hey, we haven't heard from Ian country in a little bit. What's going on? Don't they need dollars to buy oil? So they show up one day on a diplomatic mission, and they go, so you guys, is something wrong? Do you need oil?
No, nothing's wrong. Everything's great. We have fusion now.
You have fusion.
Yeah, we
and
don't
then
need
and then he pulls out his Beretta and he
What is
clicks
that?
it and he
What
goes,
have
bang.
Yep.
And then he goes, problem solved, guys.
Chaos.
Anybody else want to use fusion power? So look, I'm being very, very facetious. It's much more complicated than that. It's not so simple. It's not like the U.S. is a gigantic supervillain of a nation, but that is a big concern. I do believe if we ever actually reached fusion ignition, the U.S. would quickly use that to reshape the world in its favor. I don't think the U.S. is purposefully holding back electrical technologies,
And it gets back to your point about China, because all of our interests, all of our politicians are basically sold out to them. And there's going to be no concerted effort or urgency to switch over to that, because the status quo is that oil runs everything. If you want to win re-election, you got to continue making sure that the oil industry is satisfied.
Well, it's not just that. It's so even if we perfect nuclear or fusion, it's going to take a long time and a lot of energy. How much can we allocate in that direction? The fear is China's building new coal power plants. They're absolutely exploiting fossil fuels, and fossil fuels have a tremendously high energy return on energy invested. So if the U.S. shifts to renewable energies or developing new power plants, we are at a disadvantage. China is rapidly expanding and growing, and it seems like we're losing that fight anyway. So at this point, get the fusion online, baby.
Do you think that there's a concerted effort behind the scenes for the United States and China to divide the world between them with a petrodollar economy?
No.
And they're letting us bicker about human rights violations, but they don't really care because for them it's business.
No, what do you mean? China is about to overtake the U.S., and the U.S. is flailing and flopping about.
But they know we could never go to war because of the nuclear conflict. So they're like,
That's not true.
I mean, well,
No,
that
we
we
don't.
should never go to war. I mean, both
Well,
governments.
you should never go to war for any reason, and nobody ever really wanted war.
I think there are
Some people, I
sometimes,
guess.
yeah,
Well,
when
yeah, the
like a vicious,
military-industrial complex wants war.
or
but
like
yeah,
when there's like a marauding force slaughtering humans and you need to intercede,
like ISIS.
Bro, nukes will be
Al-Qaeda.
fired
I
if
don't
if
know,
if if,
like the
if
Huns.
nukes will be fired if war breaks out.
Right. So they don't want. Nobody really wants that. I don't think. But I wonder if there's this business class is using both these countries to basically partition the globe, and that's why there hasn't been a move on the human rights violations in the Uyghurs, and at all.
I don't
because-
think there's any grand plan to partition the globe. That's too much.
I think the grand plan is ultimately decoupling. You mentioned, obviously, does this aggression happen under any other administration? It has, but this would be the trajectory that China would be going down, regardless of whether Trump or Biden was in office now.
Right.
Because the idea is that right now, a lot of these global corporations, they can live off of China on basically selling a set of products just to the Chinese citizens and then a set of products to the rest of the world. Like, they will actually manufacture stuff differently for two different audiences or two different consumer groups.
That's true for a lot of factories. You know that, right?
Yeah.
Like when you go to Walmart to buy a TV, you're getting a different TV than if you buy it at Best Buy. People don't realize that. No, and I mean it. So if you go and there's a Sony or like, a Samsung TV at Walmart, made with different materials than the Samsung TV at Best
Same
Buy.
model, different materials.
Yeah, that's my understanding. I can fact check me on this one. I could be wrong.
Well, I know Google specifically tailors their search algorithms for different countries,
Different regions. What do you mean?
Yeah.
If you Google search
regions.
right now, and anybody listening, if you Google search auto repair, are they going to send you New York auto repair? No. They're going to know exactly where you are, and they're going to show you auto repair
I think
around
they
your
actually
area.
give different tech, like different coding of their browsers and stuff. Like they gave China a specific browser that could be used to track the people, if I'm not mistaken, because China wouldn't let Google into the country, so they had to like build a specific.
yeah.
Well,
had to
they
build
they
that
were
stuff
working
for
on
sure.
what was that thing called, Dragon something, and then they got Google employees
Dragonfly?
revolted. Yeah, Dragonfly or something. Google employees revolted that Google was working with China, so then Google backed off. Google's response was, well, if we don't go in and do this, someone else will. At least then we'll have some control. It's like, no, you won't. If you go, when these companies go to China, and they do, they have to open up a CCP wing of their company. They create like a division of the Chinese Communist Party in their companies. So I'll tell you this. If the NBA, if this is true, this is what we heard from China Uncensored. If the NBA has a company, a branch operating in China, that would imply the Chinese Communist Party has influence in the NBA, in the United States as well as in China. Because they'll go to them and say, case in point, when the NBA banned the phrase "Free Hong Kong" on customizable jerseys. Do you remember this?
Yeah, I remember that.
And that was in
vividly.
America. Why? Because the NBA in China, the Chinese went to them and said, don't allow people in America to say "Free Hong Kong." They went, you got it, buddy. And so when you try to type it in, it would give you an error.
Right.
Look, I mean, dude, we had Blizzard, the gaming company. They have the game Hearthstone. One of the people competing held up a sign that said "Free Hong Kong," and so the player got suspended, created a huge controversy, and then they were like, oh, no, they got suspended because it was political in general, and we're not all about that. It's like, no, dude, we get it. It's because you have people, you have a branch in China, and China told you. So we're already there. China's Communist Party has its tendrils across the globe, and whether anyone realizes it or not, I mean, Bill Maher said it, we lost.
Yeah.
We lost already.
I don't know. That is very pessimistic of him to say that. I think that we're definitely losing the military game. But like if it's a grand game of Civ and you can win with religion, with culture, with military, with science, I don't think they're winning across the board. They're really, really totalitarian. Like the people hate it in China, from what I can tell. They're just not allowed to say it. So that we got that working for them, or for us rather. Well, you said something about decoupling. I wanted to just get
Yeah, so decoupling means that, trade between the United States and China, it cessates. There's no more trade. And so whatever relations that did exist no longer exist. And so you basically would have to rely on any manufacturing company that would exist. Say an Apple or a not Disney, but let's just focus on Apple for a second. If Apple was manufacturing iPhones in China and say the United States and China decouple, then all of a sudden Apple has to figure out how they're going to manufacture their stuff and be able to sell that over in the United States and the rest of the world.
And overnight, that factory in China becomes property of China.
Exactly.
And then they have the iPhone factories, and they make iPhones for themselves, and then we don't.
Yeah.
Let's move to U.S. media real quick because I want to advance the conversation. Quick. We have this tweet from Glenn Greenwald, which is going to blow everybody's minds.
Oh God.
Glenn tweeted, if you're a critic of the media, you need to hear this. Glenn Greenwald tweeted, "Read this amazing section from Judge Silberman's dissent today in a defamation case before the D.C. Circuit on how an increasingly ideologically homogenized U.S. media is not only threatening core free speech values, but also the ability to be informed." In his dissent, he wrote, "It is well accepted that viewpoint discrimination raises the specter that the government may effectively drive certain ideas or viewpoints from the marketplace. But ideological homogeneity in the media or in the channels of information distribution risks repressing certain ideas from the public consciousness just as surely as if access were restricted by the government. To be sure, there are few notable exceptions to the Democratic Party ideological control. Fox News, the New York Post, the Wall Street Journal's editorial page. It should be sobering for those concerned about news bias that these institutions are controlled by a single man and his son. Will a lone holdout remain in what is otherwise a frighteningly orthodox media culture? After all, there are serious efforts to muzzle Fox News. And although upstart, mainly online conservative networks have emerged in recent years,
let's try
I think it might go on. No, so he doesn't continue from there, but I'll read the next section that Glenn posts. He said, "It should be borne in the mind that the first step taken by any potential authoritarian or dictatorial regime is to gain control of communications, particularly the delivery of news. It is fair to conclude, therefore, that one-party control of the press and media is a threat to a viable democracy. It may even give rise to countervailing extremism. The First Amendment guarantees a free press to foster a vibrant trade in ideas. But a biased press can distort the marketplace. And when the media has proven its willingness, if not eagerness, to so distort, it is a profound mistake to stand by unjustified legal rules that serve only to enhance the press's power." Absolutely amazing to hear that. But maybe it's too little too late. But I'll tell you this, it is absolutely true. How sobering, as Judge Silberman describes it, that the main resistance to democratic orthodoxy in the media is Murdoch.
So they said it's
one really old man.
And his son? Is that who they're talking about? Murdoch's son?
Lachlan.
Yeah. Lachlan.
Yeah.
But is Lachlan the one? Isn't he woke or something?
Yeah.
It's over, everybody. Back it in. We're going home, and welcome to your new cult.
I think we're
how
incredibly
you play
resilient
the
as
hand you're
humans.
dealt.
So if someone is speaking out against it, that means we have a chance.
Maybe so.
It's a dissent. I mean, is this too little, too late? I absolutely think it is, man. Maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe I'm. Look, there's a lot of people watching this show right now, and this is not a. You know what? No. I was going to say we're not ideological here, but we are absolutely ideologically motivated here. Classically liberal, libertarian, and socially liberal values represent the conversations we have here for the most part. There's a reason. It's really fascinating why leftists are so hard to book, because they're an authoritarian orthodoxy. It's very hard to speak safely when you exist inside the confines of their moral framework. That's why I've done numerous interviews. I did an interview in Berkeley with this woman. I'm standing in the street and I'm filming. Some woman walks up and starts talking to me, and I'm holding my camera. I asked her some questions. She answered.
It's a matter of give and
She gave
take.
horrible answers. 5 minutes later, she walks up to me and says, "Delete the footage." No joke. And I said, "I'm filming, and you walked up to me. I'm not deleting it." And she was like, "No, you have to. I don't give you permission." And I was like, "I don't need your permission. You're in public talking to me while I'm filming." I don't try to generate controversy, though, so I blurred her face. I'm not trying to drag her. I'm not trying to get some random woman on the street in trouble with the woke. But I did want to show what she had basically said was, conservatives who get physically attacked deserve it because of the way they dress. She said there was a woman wearing a MAGA hat. She was asking for it. No joke. No joke. And so the issue there is, when you think about the moral framework that exists in the minds of these people, when they say women who are wearing certain clothes aren't asking for it, but when it comes to Trump supporters, they are, it shows there's no actual principle behind their moral framework other than join the tribe or burn. She wanted me to delete the footage because her ideas would get her canceled. When people heard what she said, you can't stick your neck out. So many of these people, they do their shows, the priests of the orthodoxy. The guests we have on this show, who are more than happy to come and speak, are confident in themselves, in classically liberal ideals of freedom of speech, and being honest, expressing themselves, and they're not scared about what the woke mob's going to do to them.
Well, I think that's an overstatement for me, since I have a very low self-esteem, which is why I got into media, so that my parents would know this who I am.
There you go.
You've succeeded.
As for most of these journalists who work at mainstream publications.
Yeah, that's interesting. In that dissent, I don't, as groundbreaking as that may be, or earth-shattering as that may be, if that were, say, any other, if that were a celebrity that had, like, say, a red pill moment and said something like that, maybe it would cause.
Sarah Silverman?
Yeah.
She came out recently and said, I don't want to be associated with either party because of the elitism and the absolutism.
Well, what's her name? The name is escaping. Rose McGowan.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
When she had her moment, that was big. That was huge, especially in the middle of a presidential election. She's like, I don't, what the accusations of Tara Reid against then candidate Joe Biden was enough for me, and the way it was handled from her charmed co-star Alyssa Milano.
Yeah.
That was enough for her to be like, I'm done. That's it.
I want to be optimistic right now. You know why?
Let's try
They're not
this.
cool people. Who wants to be like them? Do you want to be one of these, like, easily agitated, panicky, finicky, woke culture warriors working for one of these publications? Some people, but it's remnants of the old world, right? So the New York Times has prestige. The Gray Lady, the paper of record? Mm-hmm. Young people grow up, millennials, hearing great stories about the prestigious New York Times. It is my dream to be a Times journalist. Congratulations, they hired you, and now you complain about TikTokers. Is that what you really thought you were going to be doing? Or did you think you were going to be, like, meeting in a parking garage and some, like, source walks up and he's got a manila folder and he's like, please, don't tell anyone I was here, otherwise they'll kill me. And you're like, don't worry, I'm going to expose these criminals and then in reality you're like, so the 17-year-old on TikTok, you're never going to believe this. Like, as a TikTok mentioned, right? But then, like, one of his friends showed up. That's what the New York Times has become.
Ugh.
Who wants to be that today? What young person who's actually on TikTok is looking at what these journalists at the New York Times are and going, I really want to be like that when I grow up. They're not doing that.
Handy.
So what's happening now is these woke culture warriors of cancel culture at these big publications are not cool, and nobody wants to be like them. Young people especially.
You ever seen the show The Boys?
Oh yeah, of course.
No, it's very. I don't know why this conversation reminds me of that, but it's specifically in the storyline of the first season with Starlight, who is trying to get into the Seven of Vought.
It's for those that aren't familiar. She's a superhero. She wants to join the big superhero organization.
Right. Yeah. So, and then she gets there, and she realizes obviously this is all a big charade. This is a corporate entity. They don't care about, like, actually
always an answer.
saving people's lives. They care about the money flow.
Yep.
And so, if you haven't watched it, I highly recommend it.
Good show.
It is a good show, which I got off Amazon Prime because we're now basically pumping up Jeff Bezos' numbers. But
That's right. but it kind of shows that classical trope of, don't meet your heroes.
Right.
She really, really wanted to be this big hero, join this big organization, and then she realized it was actually really awful. Everyone sucked.
Yeah.
And she didn't want to be there anymore. But
But that's like, but that is very much media today.
But it's worse than that.
No, I know. Well, I mean, we're
No,
talking about
listen.
a fictional show.
like
Here's what I mean. In the show The Boys, the Seven, which is like the Justice League, they're cool. They're celebrities. Everybody wants to be them. They're in the movies. They got endorsement deals. Who wants to go work for the Daily Beast to write about, I don't know, cats or something stupid that's nonsensical and made up? No, who wants to be that when they grow up? Nobody. So here's my point. We've talked about how movies today going woke are becoming like Christian films used to be. Like good flicks or whatever?
Yeah, Pure Flicks.
Pure flicks. And everybody always laughs and then
that.
like jokingly ribs me for like, hey, don't make fun of Pure Flicks. It's like watching those really campy religious versions of films with like Bible Man or whatever and VeggieTales and stuff.
VeggieTales.
As the woke cult takes over Hollywood, movies become preachy, boring, and nonsensical
It's a religion.
and uncool. You got to watch. Have you seen the new Craft?
No.
You will absolutely hate it. You know why? I don't care about the wokeness. It's not a good movie. It makes no sense. The pacing is off. I have no idea what the message is.
It's a matter of
and it's just
give and
like
take.
nothing happens, I guess, and then a guy bursts into flames or something. The whole movie is a woke PSA where they just keep giving off woke pot shots of like, they'll be walking down the street and then one person makes a comment about being trans and you're like, what does that have to do with the movie? Like, why is this dialogue in the film? Because they want to make sure you know they're woke. The wokeness is more important than the storyline. Thus, they've created something boring that nobody wants to engage with. The movie will fail, and then kids who see it will grow up thinking, that's not cool, I don't want to be like that. If it's not cool and doesn't inspire youth, it won't exist.
Who are your heroes?
My heroes?
Yeah.
Oh, they're mostly rappers, but they're not really heroes.
how
I don't know.
you
I mean,
play
I actually no. My heroes are like my dad, my grandpa, like my legitimate heroes. People I think are like through and through the greatest people I know, and I don't. The thing is, and that's exactly what it is. The never meet your heroes. I don't have any like celebrity heroes.
Well, you said rappers.
I like rappers.
What-
I love hip hop. In like their inspirations and how I can like
I love this so
make
much.
music.
I love them.
But-
My heroes are Dave Grohl, Eddie Vedder, man. It's musicians.
Yeah, I know, but
it's
but
real
the thing
people.
is, yeah, I know it's the real people, but like, that's the thing is like I'm terrified of the potential of meeting any of them because of how of getting
super
disappointed.
flawed, but they still inspire you. It's
Yeah.
not
Oh, bro,
dudes
we
at
all
the
met
New
our
York Times.
inspirations.
Listen.
Who are your heroes?
I don't have any heroes.
Did you used to?
Never.
Like
No.
growing up, you never
Nope.
watch people
Let's
or
think this
No,
through.
I'm too arrogant. I'm not even kidding. Like
This is
I would
honest.
watch skate videos and there'd be like a pro who's like the best in the world, and I'd be sitting there going, I can do that. My friends would be like, shut up, you're not gonna tray flip a 10 stair.
Oh,
and
you
I'm
needed
like,
new friends.
oh yeah?
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
I would go and throw myself down the stairs and get hurt.
Let's
I
go.
Well, the reason I brought it up is
I
because
was not that good, but I was certainly arrogant enough to think I was.
my heroes are not these people that write these pieces. I don't think anyone looks up to these people and thinks I want to be like that guy that wrote
No,
that pop
but
piece. They
I
look at
wanna-
musicians. They look at like great performers.
Yeah.
That's the real challenge in life.
And it's mostly a way of how they think because musicians just generally think a different way. They see sounds, they can compose music, they can create stuff out of thin air, and it just resonates with people.
I think
like it gives
music,
you chills, and when you hear it, like when you hear
it
your
affects
favorite
you-
song, like you ever get chills down your spine when you hear that?
all
Yeah.
the time.
music
Boom.
affects
Yeah.
us physiologically.
Right.
Like,
Great.
the beats, it's like, and it affects our brains in certain ways. It triggers emotions, and we like feeling good, and we like being made to feel. So we like the people who make us feel that way. But there's something interesting about it. I will say though, we've already met our heroes because of Twitter, and they were all awful. Look,
It's
I
true.
would never. I don't look up to actors, and I don't care for actors. I think they're just actors, and I've never understood the obsession with like celebrity. I've always just been like, I don't care. Who cares? Brady shaved their head, whatever. But now we get to actually meet these people, and we learned. Chris Evans, for instance, Mark Ruffalo. They're really nasty people, right? Chris Evans is okay. He's kind of nasty. Mark Ruffalo is one of the meanest people I've ever seen on the internet. It's like he just posts nasty things. David Cross, also a mean guy. And I'm surprised at how many comedians and celebrities are just nasty. It's really messed up. You look at Joe Rogan's Twitter. What do you see?
Instagram
Instagram posts of like him eating steak and like his dog.
Yes.
And
Marshall.
people like Joe
Marshall.
Rogan. You know why? Because when you see him for who he is, you're like, oh, he seems like a cool dude. But then you turn to like some of these other comedians and movie actors and stuff, and they're just posting nasty things, screaming, posting pictures of decapitated Trump heads, and you're like, I don't want to be around that.
Well,
you know what I mean?
This is kind of why the list exists.
The list
The list
of people who should have their phones taken away.
People should have their phones taken away because it's designed to save people from themselves. And the reason for that is because, as you mentioned, people are really nasty online.
But if you don't enforce the list, then what does the list really do?
well, that's why I went independent, Tim.
Oh yeah, tell
there's
us
gonna
about
be
that.
there's gonna be like two guys in suits showing up to like Brian Seltzer's house, knocking on the door, and be like, Brian, it's time, and they take his phone from him. And just,
Boom. If I could do that, I'd do that right away. Yeah.
Brian Seltzer specifically.
I'm looking for seed money. Anybody interested?
Yes.
Yeah, you're launching.
My Twitter DMs.
You're
are open.
launching a network, the Siraj.
the
Hashmi-
Habibi network.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you like just went live, just went like solo.
Yeah. Today is my final
That's
day.
big, dude.
Yeah.
So maybe what you make will actually be something inspirational to young people, and they'll be like, when I grow up, I want to make a list of people who should have their phones taken away.
Well, the idea is that I don't do it forever, and I basically
No, but you got to pass the list on.
I got to pass the list on.
But no, hold on.
It's like the
but
Captain
listen.
America shield.
But listen, this is what I'm talking about. The list is important. You know why? Because it's funny, it's hilarious, and people block you when you put them on the list. So
Yeah.
for those that aren't familiar,
By the way, your guest from yesterday, Kurt Schlichter, he blocked me because I put him on the list.
Nice.
all right. So basically, the way it works is someone tweets something really dumb.
Mm-hmm.
And then if it qualifies for like you should have your phone taken away for tweeting that, you'll tweet at them like it's a meme post. There's one.
Yeah,
There was
it's like,
one I think
the
of you.
writing hand emojis.
Right. There was one of you as Consuela from Family Guy, I think. One of you in a truck full of people with a coyote driving the car,
Yep.
and all the blue checks being taken away. It's funny. People see it and they laugh. There's going to be some young kid who's seeing the world of politics. He sees someone like Brian Stelter from CNN tweet something really dumb, like Tucker Carlson is the new Donald Trump or whatever. Did you put him on the list for that one or no?
That's a tame take, honestly.
Right. But some kid will see that post, see everybody laughing, and he'll think, that's cool. It makes people laugh. It exudes strength. And what that person posted was really dumb.
Yeah.
I don't want to be like the person put on the list. I want to be the person naming people who should be on the list.
Well, it's interesting because I've gotten criticisms like I'm a hall monitor, or I'm basically waging a harassment campaign against people, which is obviously not true.
Try more.
I've had people have meltdowns about me putting them on the list. Like, this is I think of a few people from very early on. I'm talking like December 2019 when this thing was still like in its infancy. And the reason why I started it was literally one of those things where, you kind of your recent Twitter habits. It's just like it just came out of thin air. It was George Conway dunking on his wife Kellyanne in a quote tweet.
He's the Lincoln Project guy.
And he is, the Lincoln Project guy. And it was like one of those things where like, oh no, you should never do that in public. Give me that phone, George. That is
taking your phone away.
Give me that phone, man. And he is the first person I put at number one, and he doesn't have a blue check. He's not verified, but like everybody thinks it's because of, everybody. The list comes for all, but like there's a higher standard to meet if you're not verified, because literally anybody could just post whatever you want. If you're not verified. If you're verified, there's obviously like a standard that you have to live up
Well, yeah,
to.
you got the endorsement of Twitter.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I was thinking that some of the value of your work too is like you mentioned the resonation that you feel from a musician,
matter of
that
give and
vibration.
take.
Also, you put yourself on camera and your voice, so you're creating resonance, literal, physical resonance.
Right.
It's so different than just being behind a typing thing and putting words on the internet. Like that's how you really affect people, in my opinion. I think this internet video media is so powerful.
I prefer video more than writing every day of the week.
Oh, yeah.
And that was my strength. I mean, I was a commentary video writer. Commentary video editor. I do edit videos, but like they had writer in there. Just because I did write from time to time, but like it turned out in probably like the last like 3 years of me being at the Examiner is that if I wrote anything, it would already be a video. So like whatever you see in an article is really just like the script that I
Your
have
victory.
in the
just
video.
an
So
illusion.
it is a better way of reaching people because most people don't like to read. I mean, that's just kind of the way of the world. People have very low attention spans.
Well, they
And-
can turn on a podcast and then go work on something else.
Exactly.
You
And
can
that's
play
why
video
podcasts
games.
have become so effective. That's why audiobooks have become so effective, is that you can literally multitask as you're listening to this stuff. And if you have to rewind, you can rewind. Who cares? No one cares.
Yeah, you're free to do it. But people play video games, listen to podcasts. They go to work.
That's
they turn
very
on
tough to do. I don't know how.
You just pause it when they say something really cool and then go rewind it
Boom,
and watch.
yeah.
I mean, I've done that. It's like you're making breakfast or whatever. You turn on a podcast and you just
Folding
make
laundry,
breakfast.
yeah.
It's like watching TV or
But
something.
I almost always Twitch stream now when I play video games. I don't know. I should probably just game offline for a bit.
It's going to be really interesting in the future because I see a lot of people, like everybody has a Twitch channel and they'll get like 7 live viewers or whatever. And I'm like, who are these like 7 people who are watching instead of playing and doing the stream themselves? And what happens when everyone does and then everyone is streaming them playing a game and no one's watching?
A
'cause
lot of
everyone's
people
playing?
just have it on in the background.
Yeah.
A lot of people.
Yeah.
So
And you hear people saying like, "So I'm gonna go steal this car and then light this hooker on fire."
Sometimes I'll play the game Heroes of the Storm. It's a MOBA, multiplayer online battle arena game, and sometimes it's just so stressful that I just want to watch other people play it, so I don't have to worry about winning or losing. I can just enjoy the process.
I mean, I'm not very competitive at all, which means I suck, but I do enjoy just like the interaction and the fun that you get with like if you play with a community of people, like just like the enjoyment and the jokes and laughter that you have with them. Yeah, some people just take gaming way too seriously, and that's probably why everybody wants to like crack down on gamers.
True.
What have you been streaming lately?
I do play the COD Cold War or Black Ops Cold War, Ghost of Tsushima. I'm trying to get into more of these samurai games. I hear Nioh as well as Sekiro are really money.
Yeah, that's a Souls type game.
Yeah, I am playing Demon Souls on PS5. Very difficult game.
We actually have a streaming rig for gaming we're setting up.
Oh, nice.
There's a lot of expansion on the way. The first thing we have to do is create the new timcast.com website. Then we've got to create the new brand website for all verticals, gaming, mystery podcasts, and all that stuff. But it'll happen when it happens, I guess. We're going to be hiring and just got to grow organically. It's not super easy to just do outright, but it's coming. But how about we go over to Super Chats?
Yeah.
To see what everyone else has to say. My friends, if you are listening and you have not already smashed that like button, you should, because it is greatly appreciated. And go to timcast.com, become a member for exclusive members only segments. And I'll for everybody. Actually, we got a super chat here. I'll just read it. Will again, for some reason YouTube always blocks the name of the first super chat, so I can't see it. But they ask, will we see the Chicken City this weekend? We did actually. It's not a big city. It's just like 4 little chicken houses. We have it built. It is 99% done. We just have to add one more security layer. It's this big fenced off area, and then we've like dug into the ground so that it's pretty secure. But the issue is, we wanted to go get chickens, and it's still a little too cold. So we were supposed to be able to bring the chickens out to the Chicken City this week. I think we're gonna wait because they're still a little small and it's still a little cold out, colder than we expected it was gonna be. So it might be another week, but maybe we will finally film something. And I always keep saying that, and it's like never happens. So fingers crossed, it's there.
It's a Potemkin village.
Yeah, it really
Currently,
is.
yes. A chicken ghost town.
Are you
There's
sure-
no chickens in it
Are you
yet.
sure it's not a chicken microverse?
Yeah.
Microverse.
Ooh, yeah.
And we're gonna
Powering all the electricity in the
It's true.
studio.
The chickens are very
Yeah.
young. You just mentioned that. The chickens
Yeah,
are like
yeah.
kind of babies still,
They're
right?
little. They're
Yeah,
little,
yeah, yeah.
Like adolescent.
They need they're good to go now to be on their own outside, like they're big enough. But the guy we bought them from was like, you might lose some, but you'll probably be fine. And I was like, we'll just keep them inside for another week just to be safe, right?
Yeah.
They should be fine though.
In the temperature.
Oh.
Yeah, right now. But I would think we want to be safe. But maybe we'll film some of them doing chicken stuff and show you what we got going on.
Chicken
All right, let's see. We got Mr.